Coming up on Tech News Today, what Apple will announce tomorrow, what Nokia will announce tomorrow, and how to fix your Windows 8.1 RT. All that and more next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, October 21st, 2013. Tech News Today is brought to you by Shutterstock.com. With over 28 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips, Shutterstock helps you take your creative projects to the next level. For 25% off your new account, go to Shutterstock.com and use offer code TNT1013. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Maya Zactor.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show that keeps you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world and wraps them in the loving embrace of context, starting with the top 10 stories of the day in the news fuse. Apple's October 22nd press announcement is almost guaranteed to involve new iPads, a release date for OS X Mavericks, the new Mac Pro. We're likely to get new MacBook Pros and Mac Minis as well. Now, some pages that appeared and disappeared on Apple's website over the weekend indicate we might also get software updates to iLife and iWork apps and a reduction in price of the GarageBand app from $4.99 to free.
Facebook experienced partial downtimes this morning, with users unable to post things like status updates or photos or even like things. When users try to post status updates, if you're one of the people that's affected, you'll receive a message explaining that there was a problem and to try again later. Not really ideal. The same is true for likes and photo posts. The outage also seemed to be affecting the native iOS apps and Facebook's payment service.
Microsoft released a Surface RT recovery image today because users were having issues updating their Surface RT tablets to Windows RT 8.1. Over the weekend, Microsoft pulled the RT 8.1 update due to installation issues. Just all kinds of things. Tom was a part of that group. The Surface RT recovery image weighs in at 3.7 gigabytes and will restore an RT back to its original state.
I restored it on my own without your help, Microsoft. Thanks a lot. Nokia World kicks off tomorrow, and the Wall Street Journal reports the company will celebrate selling 8 million Lumia smartphones between June and September. That's double what they sold a year ago of that same model. Some other announcements have leaked out. A page accidentally published on Nokia's official Chinese Tmall store showed a Lumia 1520 with a 6-inch display and a 20-megapixel PureView camera. And a Twitter account called EvLeaks posted a picture leaked of a Nokia Guru. Now, this is a similar product to Apple's iPod Shuffle, but with near-field communication built in.
An identity theft service called superget.info apparently sold Social Security and driver's license numbers, as well as bank account and credit card data on millions of Americans, purchased much of its data from Experian, which you might recognize as one of the 3 major credit bureaus. This is according to an investigation by Krebs on Security. Now, back in November of 2011, we first heard about superget.info. Krebs wrote about this fraud site that marketed the ability to look up Social Security numbers and birthdays, driver's license records, and financial information on millions of Americans. Now that the Secret Service is involved, I think we can all just rest easy because these things always end up working out.
Right.
Research firm Gartner says that tablet shipments will grow 53.4% this year compared to 2012. Traditional PC sales like desktops and laptops are expected to decline 11.2% compared to last year. However, if you take a look at all computing devices as a whole, that's tablets, phones, and traditional PCs, the combined shipments will hit 2.32 billion units in 2013, which is a 4.5% increase compared to 2012.
David Pogue is leaving the New York Times to start a new tech site for Yahoo. Pogue will write blog posts, columns, and post videos. CEO of Yahoo, Marissa Mayer, says it's a major expansion of consumer tech coverage for Yahoo.
Today, the Financial Times is reporting HTC's CEO, Peter Chow, will give up some of his daily operational responsibilities to Cher Wang, which is another one of the company's founders. Chow will use his now much freer schedule to focus on HTC's smartphones. Now, the company, of course, has suffered from a market share loss sliding revenue, a recent 9-figure quarterly loss. Its HTC One handset seemed like a nice phone, but has failed to turn the company around. The company's losing money for the first time in its more than decade-long history as a public company.
If you're keeping score on Edward Snowden leaks, this weekend Le Monde reported the U.S. monitored millions of phone calls in France, and Prime Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault is shocked to find spying going on in his establishment. The French foreign minister has summoned the U.S. ambassador. Also, Spiegel reports the NSA systematically spied on former Mexican President Felipe Calderon's public email account. The email domain was also used by cabinet members and included diplomatic, economic, and leadership communications.
Crown Castle International just paid AT&T $4.85 billion to purchase 600 of AT&T's towers, as well as lease over 9,000 towers. The money AT&T receives will let the company upgrade its networks, as well as aid AT&T in its stock buyback program. AT&T is also rumored to be looking into expansion to Europe. This money may help that endeavor.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Shutterstock.com. At Shutterstock.com, you'll find the perfect image or video for whatever creative project you've got in mind. If you're working on a website, I use it when I'm doing posts for podcasts. A lot of times I'm looking for that perfect image, and I don't want to go steal something because I might get in trouble for that. So go to Shutterstock and get yourself a royalty-free image that you can use in almost any product you want legally. They're adding 20,000 images every day. So every time you visit, you're going to find something new. Plus, they review these. They review each image individually for content and quality before adding it to its library. And they have flexible pricing. You can choose individual image packs or a monthly subscription for the best deal. We've got a Twit subscription, get you 25 images a day with that's a standard subscription. You can download any image, any size. You pay just the one price. Shutterstock gives you the images you need. They have these great search tools that you can use to search by color, temperature, or mood. They also have something called a light box. So I use that a lot to say, hey, think about one of these 3 images. Can you take a look and tell me which one you like? And then get some advice that way. Also, they have an award-winning iPad app. Try Shutterstock today by signing up for a free account. You don't need to give them a credit card to browse around. Just start an account, begin using Shutterstock to help imagine what your next project could be like. Save some favorite images to a Lightbox to review later. Once you decide to purchase, use offer code TNT1013, and new accounts will receive 25% off any package. That's Shutterstock.com. And for 25% off new accounts, use offer code TNT1013. We thank Shutterstock for their support of Tech News Today. Well, joining us now to discuss the stories of the day, it's good to have Scott Johnson from the Morning Stream, The Instance, Autopilot, and more on the show. How's it going, Scott?
I'm good, Tom. Thanks for having me back.
It's great to have you, my friend. We've got an Apple announcement tomorrow. Are you excited?
I'm pretty excited because if the rumors are true about what the next Mini will be, that will be the hot tablet business for me this year. I really want that thing. But it kind of depends on whether it has these 3 or 4 rumored capabilities that we've been hearing about for weeks now. And if it does, I'm in. If it doesn't, I'm not sure. I might be waiting a year. And that will be the first time in iPad history I didn't get an iPad one kind or another every year they've iterated on it. So this will be a really interesting day tomorrow.
Well, I'm curious if they're going to do MacBook Pros. I'm in the market for new laptops. Sarah, what can we expect in that Apple announcement tomorrow?
Well, as is with always these Apple announcements, a lot of stuff changes and rumors come in in the 11th hour. But we do think the rumors are pretty solid that the 5th generation iPad and the 2nd generation iPad Mini are due for some nice upgrades. Sources say that the full size should feature a thinner, lighter design that looks a lot more like the iPad minis, a better camera for people who like taking iPad photos, because those people just aren't going away. We'll also run Apple's new 64-bit A7 chip. Now, yeah, the wild card, Scott, I agree with you here, because and depending on who you ask, people have all sorts of theories. Is that iPad mini going to have Retina? That's something that I said a year ago. It's a complete deal breaker if it doesn't. The iPad mini is a great little machine, but I mean, every time I pick it up, I think about the fact that it's not Retina for the entire last year. We heard, that Retina's, the iPad mini is probably going to have an A7 chip. It's certainly capable of running Retina, but we've also heard that there are supply chain issues with the idea of having a Retina iPad mini. Plus, there are, according to sources who pay attention to these sorts of things, inventory levels of Apple's 16 gigabyte iPad mini Wi-Fi runs for about $329. And then the 32 gigabyte iPad mini Wi-Fi, which is about $430, are very, very high as far as what's being stocked. So it's sort of like, well, does that point to the fact that Apple isn't clearing them out? Or are those going to drop in price and become much more attractive as non-Retina models going forward once we get another Retina model? As you mentioned, Tom, new MacBook Pros are supposedly about to be upgraded with Intel's Haswell processors, which is something that Apple brought to MacBook Airs earlier this year. So that all makes sense. Something that we know for a fact is GarageBand became free. When iLife, Apple dropped the prices to from anything to free with the rollout of iOS 7. GarageBand was the only program that was not free. It is now free, although it does still include in-app purchasing, which probably has to do with getting around licensing fees for songs. Scott, it sounds like, I mean, you're an iPad faithful. You're interested in these announcements. You think no Retina Mini will keep you on the sidelines?
Well, you made a really interesting point that I hadn't considered before, which was the idea of all this existing iPad mini stock still being there. And Apple already has precedence for this. They did this with the iPad 2 with the launch of the third generation full-size iPad. That came out and they said, all right, well, you've got this new hotness, but over here you've got this slightly lower end, still works great, still going to run all your apps solution that you can pay a little bit less for. That's still a thing. Yeah, that's old hotness, and you can still buy that on their store. So it kind of now makes sense to me that they might do something similar with the mini line, because I think they were already kind of a little upside down on cost versus what they were charging for the mini, and for them to just stay the course, go Retina and go A7 and not see that price increase is probably bad for Apple. So this is a way for them to get a little bit more money out of the new minis if they indeed have those features. But for me, if that thing's got Retina, if it has the finger sensor thing, which I've fallen in love with on my 5S, a thing I thought I wasn't going to care about at all, and now I'd love that thing.
Oh, me too.
Then I'm in. I feel like that's my next tablet, and I don't care if it is so much more than a regular mini. I went with the mini last year in the face of knowing it wasn't Retina, kind of having the same issues as you, right? Like, just, I don't know if I can deal with this, knowing that it's not Retina every time I look at this thing. But the convenience of size and that kind of form factor, I believe, is sort of the future of tablets anyway. I feel like any bigger than that and things get a little nuts for me. So that was an easy choice then. But this year, the choice is not so easy. I've either got to have a major technical upgrade to that thing, or I'm either waiting a year or I'm seriously going back to considering, a fifth gen full-size iPad. So I really hope all those rumors are true. I don't love the idea that it might be more than what I paid for the previous mini, but I still think that's going to be a really hot tablet, no matter what angle you look at it from. That'll be pretty much the tablet tone this year.
I think I would be very surprised if they don't announce a Retina Mini. Two explanations of this supply chain thing make sense to me. One is that they're going to keep the old Mini around. I think that's the most logical one. And the other is that they're pushing these out into the retail chain. Remember, the supply chain data that they're getting at Apple Insider is not the Apple Store supply chain information. It's the retail side. And they've done that before, where when they're going to retire a model, they push it out into retail to dump the existing inventory, because they don't want to have that sitting around in the Apple Store. They always want to look freshest there. So I think we will see a Retina iPad Mini tomorrow. Ayaz, you have any guesses?
Well, I'm expecting the iPad to be more mini influence and the mini to get the Retina display, because it would be just a huge mistake if Apple didn't keep up with every other Android tablet that's packing, and Windows tablets that are packing these incredible displays into their tablets. If Apple doesn't get on board with that, they're going to be looked at as 2 generations behind already, because there's no excuse to not have a high-resolution display on a 7-inch device at this point. The Nexus 7's got it. Why doesn't the iPad have the iPad Mini? I guess I'm more excited because I think the iPad stuff's kind of been known already. I guess I'm more excited about Mavericks to see if it's going to be finished already, and the new Mac Pros. I want to know a lot more about this garbage can-shaped thing to see if it's actually worth all the hype that Phil Schiller was saying they can innovate again. What's going to make this thing spectacular? What kind of accessories are they talking about with that in the future? So I'm excited about the iPad thing as a consumer, but as a tech nerd, I'm really curious about what else Apple's doing.
Yeah.
All right.
Or go ahead, Tom. I was going to say this. I'm a little bit, and I'm glad you brought it up, I'm a little bit worried about that Pro. And I'm worried about it not because it wasn't time for a refresh, or this isn't exciting, and the design isn't cool, because I think all those things are cool. I don't have a problem with that. They have a history of innovating. But as a pro user, as someone who's got a big fat tower sitting right here and have had it way too long and it's in dire need of an upgrade, I'm terrified at what I'm not going to be able to do with it. Because right now I've got 5 drives in that thing. I can swap them out anytime I want. I don't know how I'm going to be able to treat the memory or the storage in this thing, what the SSDs are going to be like, how that stuff's going to be movable, transferable, you know, how much of my shirt I'm going to have to sell to afford it. There are a lot of unanswered questions about their Pro line, and I don't know how much we're going to hear about that tomorrow. Probably none at all, but that release is inching ever closer, and I'm really curious about how that thing reviews. Excited to.
Over the weekend, Microsoft announced that it actually, Microsoft didn't really announce. They sort of secretly just pulled the Windows 8.1 RT update, only from the RT store. And just so you know, mine, which had the boot problem, is working. But Microsoft acknowledged, yeah, there was for limited number of people, there was a boot issue. And so I was able to get mine working by finding my own restore image, and you could do that yourself. But now, today, Microsoft has released an actual restore image so that you can download it directly from the Microsoft website. You have an official thing. You don't have to be a hacker or be a snooper and snoop around and try to figure out how to do this on your own. However, this is an embarrassment for Microsoft. The plus side is maybe it's not such an embarrassment because, I don't know, maybe not that many people have this, that it's going to affect things. Remember, Microsoft's the only one left making an RT tablet. Scott, it's not just me, which made me feel better about it, and new Surfaces are coming out tomorrow. Is this bad for Microsoft, or is it just tempest in a teapot, goes away, no big deal?
I think it sounds like typical trying to upgrade Windows since the day I got Windows 3.1 way back in the day, and that's unfortunate because there's a history, deserved or not, of people having trouble upgrading Windows. Now we're talking about a tablet, we're talking about a different operating system and a kind of a different ecosystem, but nonetheless, once again, there are issues. I don't actually think it's that big of a deal. It is a bit of a tempest in a teapot. The reason it's a big deal in this case, nobody ever talks about, about 1% of all iPad users couldn't get iOS 7 because of one weird issue. No one brings those things up that often anymore because generally they have a good track record. Other device makers and hardware manufacturers have a pretty good track record with this stuff. They are trying to prove something with these tablets, both the RT and the Pro. And so I feel like they need to be as squeaky clean as possible during these iterations to keep people happy. It's dangerous for them to have big publicized outages or problems or boot issues or whatever. So it's bad in that sense. And I think it's amplified because of all that history. But in the long run, if they can do this quick and make it easy for people, not that big a deal.
I think, Scott, you're hitting the nail on the head. The thing is about the Surface RT and the people who are trying to download the update just on Friday or Thursday, these are the most dedicated people that Microsoft has. And to not service them and have their products, the Microsoft software not working with the Microsoft hardware, that makes it look really bad. The fact that Microsoft was quick enough to pull the update and then come up with a recovery image within the span of about 4 days, that's pretty quick, but at internet time, that could be forever, especially if you have somewhat of a bricked RT device. So Microsoft has to do everything to make sure that the next update to any RT does not happen like this, because it has to go much smoother. Otherwise, they're going to lose a bit of credibility when it comes to servicing their own hardware.
Well, there's a recovery partition.
Oh, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
There's a recovery partition on the RT. That's all I wanted to say. But this issue prevented you from accessing it. So they essentially had no way for anyone through Microsoft to be able to fix this. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and it's perhaps a little reiteration here, but I just feel like they need to they already have kind of a limited market share. This market share that they do have, though, is an important one because these people came to the table and said, look, we see that you're trying to break into this space. We see that you're bringing some new ideas. You're bringing, the heft of Microsoft's past and its current Windows desktop ecosystem. So we're going to support you, and we're going to say, yes, we would like another strong player in this market. You really have to take care of those people. That's all I wanted to say about that. Just take care of those guys because they're going to be the ones telling their friends. They're going to be evangelizing for your products if they work well. And if this is a real issue or it lasts too long or whatever, you're going to sour the well. They're going to go off to Android. They're going to go off to iOS again. They're going to go somewhere else. And that's the danger in this, in my opinion.
Now, we got new Surfaces coming out tomorrow. We've got Apple, obviously, with their big announcement tomorrow. But Nokia World kicks off tomorrow as well, IS.
Yeah, I think they've had the October 22nd date staked out for a long time before that whole little Apple company decided to take it over. So Nokia World's tomorrow, and The Verge has put together a list of the items to expect at the event. I'm just going to hit the big ticket items. There's the Lumia 1520. This was known as Bandit. This is that Windows Phone phablet, 6-inch 1080p display, which would be one of the first Windows phones with a 1080p display. It's 2 gigabytes of RAM, quad-core Snapdragon 800 processor, 32 gigs of space, and a 20-megapixel pure-view camera. So not a 41, but a 20-megapixel camera. There's also the 2520, the Lumia 2520, which is that tablet codenamed Sirius, the 10.1-inch Windows RT 8.1 tablet. So if it exists, it'll have 8.1 or RT 8.1 from the get-go. No update issues there. It would have LTE. You've seen the red version that looks like it's destined for Verizon. There's a couple of weird accessories that have been floating around. Nokia's Bluetooth treasure tag accessory, which uses NFC and Bluetooth 4.0. You attach the tag to like a device, like a mug or something, or a remote control, and you can track it with your Nokia device. Or the Nokia Guru, which is an iPod Shuffle-like music player with NFC that Tom talked about being leaked on EvLeaks over at Twitter. Scott, do any of these potential these potential items excite you, or are these just going to get lost in the Apple landslide tomorrow?
Well, it's unfortunate that you're probably right, but I feel like these. I mean, Nokia makes sexy stuff. I'm looking at that red tablet there, and I just think, man, that thing's awesome. So for me to be excited about Nokia stuff isn't so much about being excited about Nokia, because I think they make good hardware. They've always had a good style sense. Like, all that stuff's great. Nokia's never really let anyone down in that regard. It's just that they have tied their wagon to Windows Mobile and Windows RT and the Windows ecosystem. They're a licensed Microsoft, maker of products. And so much of my desire to get a Nokia product is tied directly to how well that OS and that ecosystem survives and thrives. So it's unfortunate, but that's how I look at any of it. And it wouldn't just be Nokia, it'd be anybody. And if Apple came out and said, guess what, we're going to license Microsoft stuff for our, in another dimension, they would do this. But let's just say they did. I would suddenly be a lot less excited about a new iPad if I knew that it was something based on an OS that hasn't been able to prove itself. Or moreover, it's just a bit of a mess when it comes to apps and where you get stuff, and not being able to get really, really core important apps on that thing this late in the game. Like, that kind of stuff muddies the water. So this isn't a Nokia issue for me. I think that thing is hot, and I would buy that in a heartbeat if that was based on, for example, Android. So I don't know what that means about, well, it probably says more about me than anything else. But, I hope Nokia continues to make what they make, and they make really good stuff. But I have a feeling, unless Microsoft can really make RT an awesome OS alternative, you'll end up seeing Nokia at some point saying, yeah, we got this second line and it's based on Android. And they'll try to slowly, quietly, go to another ecosystem where there's better strength.
Anyone else think it's weird, even though it's just a code name, but that the Lumia 2520 would be codenamed Sirius?
Spelled with an S-I-R-I-U-S.
Just sounds close to Siri. I don't know.
Oh, I was thinking, are you seriously building an RT tablet? Really? That's what we're doing? Oh, yeah, we're serious.
Too, I guess.
It's serious.
It's a code name. Remember that. It's not the actual brand.
They know that code names tend to leak out.
It's not like Kit Kat.
It's like
named after a star. The Sirius is the dog star.
It's spelled the way Sirius is spelled in the Harry Potter books, a Sirius black name. So maybe they're just big Harry Potter fans.
So maybe it's like smoke. You can't catch it.
Maybe it's going to be a cool satellite radio tablet.
That's it. You've totally nailed it. That's what it's going to be. Yeah.
I actually don't hate that idea. I think that'd be kind of awesome.
But yeah, it'd be different anyway. Twitter and the music app. Remember 6 months ago when it was top of the charts? How's that Twitter music app doing these days?
It looks like it's going to drop dead pretty soon, Tom. All Things D reports that Twitter is strongly considering killing off its Twitter music mobile application. I wasn't laughing because I'm enjoying the death of this. I'm just because Tom was funny. All Things D says it's unclear whether Twitter Music, the service itself, will continue. Twitter's music app was number 6 with a bullet in the App Store when it debuted back in April. And right now, according to app analytics company Onavo, they say that Twitter is 1,672 in its own rankings. And App Annie, another analytics company, says Twitter's number 264 in the iTunes Music app section as of the 19th of October. And currently, Twitter right now is in the midst of restructuring its music team. Sarah, do you think anybody would ever miss the Twitter Music app, assuming it does die?
No, I don't. I don't know anybody who uses it on any sort of a regular basis. In fact, probably the majority of people that I know who like and use Twitter regularly have never even opened it, even if they've installed it. For whatever reason, it's weird to segment off. And this is interesting because Twitter obviously is taking television so seriously and partnering up with networks for promotion and that sort of thing. But Twitter doesn't seem to work when you try to siphon it off into one particular genre. For example, there are a lot of musical artists on Twitter, and there is a lot of music being shared via various links on Twitter. But to build an app around just that part of the conversation, it certainly doesn't work for me. Then there's also that complicated thing where if I'm following a music artist because I really like their music, well, it turns out that people don't necessarily talk about their craft 24/7 on Twitter. None of us do. So you end up getting, a lot of this, it's like a kind of celebrity thing, and that's not necessarily has anything to do with you wanting to listen to music. So I think it was a well-designed app, but in general, kind of dead on arrival.
Yeah, I'm no Nostradamus, but when this got announced, 6 months ago is all it's been?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
My first thought was, I like the idea of data translating into something useful. And Google's made a multi-billion-dollar company out of this idea that data is something you can parlay into something else. And I'm all about that. I think that stuff's great. And certainly Twitter has access to all kinds of crazy data, and they could give all kinds of crazy output for that data. And there are probably a lot of creative ideas no one's even thought of yet to do with that data. But in this particular case, it never struck me as a smart sort of add-on. It didn't feel natural. It felt weird. It'd be like me, I don't know. It'd be like Twitter saying, well, tomorrow we're starting, Twitter hamburger something, and they're going to help you find the best hamburgers in town because people tweet about burgers all the time. That just seems weird and a bridge too far. So I'm not shocked. I think it's fine that it's going away. There are a million other choices. And that's one of the other problems is they came into this, even if this was a great idea, they came at this so late in the streaming music game that, people were already discovering music left and right on RDO and other services that are fantastic and great. Now Apple's in the game. Everybody's in the game. To come in there with your weird way of getting in the game with this like weird mentions turn into music is just, it was, like I said, a bridge too far, and I didn't think it ever had feet.
Especially since, I'm an RDO subscriber, and you can link Twitter Music to RDO so that, if you click on a song, it's not just going to play some little 30-second sample. It'll launch into RDO, and you can play the whole song from there. Well, okay, that's nice, relatively seamless. But RDO has already such good discovery, and it's not muddled by the whole like crazy Twitter conversation. It's like you don't need Twitter Music in order to use RDO almost ever. So again, it's like a weird. It's like having 5 different keys to open a door when you just need the one.
I always felt like Twitter Music at best was just a way to highlight the fact that they could do some stuff, like a show-off app. Like the main purpose of Twitter Music should be to be integrated into RDO and Spotify and things like that. And that this idea of having an app was sort of a showcase of like, hey, here's some of the things we can do for your music service, and we'll get a few people to beta test it for us. So I'm not surprised that it went away. I feel like maybe this wasn't Kevin Thau's purpose when he developed the app, but maybe someone at Twitter always thought that this would go away eventually.
I think it's odd to give up on a product like that after 6 months. It's not been that long a time when it comes to this. Twitter could probably iterate a bunch. If you look at Twitter when it started, I would imagine the first 6 months of it, it didn't look like it was going to go anywhere. So if they've changed and iterated that enough to the point where they've set up all these content partnerships with TV content companies, you have kind of like a pulse of the world kind of news aspect of Twitter as well. I think they could do something with Twitter Music if they tried, but if they kill the app, I think the service will fall right with it. I just wonder why so quickly. Maybe that IPO is putting pressure to move on to more profitable or more successful ideas.
All right, there's a Steve Shaney posting going around today called Why Android First is a Myth, talking about the idea of apps coming to the Android platform first. Remember, Android has 80% of the market share worldwide. Why wouldn't you make your app for Android. And a lot of people have been wondering about this as some apps continue to come out on iOS first. Shaney is a former programmer. He's an M&A guy, merger and acquisition guy, and he advises startups. He has 9 points in his post. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it pretty much hinges on how costly it is to develop. He says Android costs 2 to 3 times more to develop than iOS. The tools are cumbersome. The API is an issue. The QA issues are a problem because you have the different platforms, the different devices. He talks about startups. He's talking about $1 million venture-funded startups. He's not talking about you or I doing this at home just in our spare time. And he says iOS supports the ability to prove metrics. If you get a seed round, that first round of funding, you do it in iOS because then you can make the metrics, get the uptake, and show the money making to get your Series A funding. That's when you do the Android version. And because Series A funding comes about 12 to 18 months after seed funding, you'll notice that Android apps tend to come 12 to 18 months after the iOS app. Jason, you're a host of All About Android, and I was curious to get your take on this. Do you from the Android side see this, and do you buy what Steve is saying?
He makes some really good points. I thought the fact, and it actually kind of illustrated it well, the fact that, you know, an app releases on iOS first, and then a year later you might see it roll out on Android, and it's possible that, you know, that second round of funding kind of makes that happen. Some of his arguments are definitely anecdotally based, and so you have to kind of take some of the stuff with a grain of salt. The people that I talk to, blah blah blah. But I don't think that the point is lost. I think that there's definitely an issue there that developers, especially first time, you know, companies developing their app and having to decide, you know, where do we put our resources? Absolutely, iOS seems right now to be the more profitable avenue to go right out of the gate. One thing that I think he misses here is the fact that a lot of times the low-cost, no app users that he talks about in his article are running older versions of Android. And by older, I mean Gingerbread, Froyo. They're on devices that came out 2.5, 3 years ago. Why are you developing apps for those people? I mean, that may sound crass, but many developers now are choosing to develop for Ice Cream Sandwich and above because they're newer devices. They bring a lot more capability, and it's okay. They're going to be they're going to be upgrading their devices eventually anyways. It's kind of like you're playing to the lowest denominator in the space, but there's no real reason to. You're not going to make a lot of money from those folks anyways, and you're going to have to kind of strip down the capabilities of your app just to do that. That might be one. Another part of this also is the tablet ecosystem, right? iOS has an incredibly strong tablet ecosystem with the iPad, but Android is no slouch anymore. This year has seen kind of a turn in that regard, and you're not getting those no data users on tablets. The tablets are all about using data. So, and you know, he mentions, and just one more, and then we'll let you guys talk. He mentions the Facebook statistic that we talked about last week, where, you know, it was like over 1,000% more ad revenue on the Facebook app for iOS versus Android. Facebook has long been an app that Android users hate. There's just from a usability standpoint, it's not great, and especially from a tablet standpoint, they don't care about tablet users at Facebook on the Android ecosystem. So, I don't know, using that statistic and applying it to Android as a whole is kind of flawed. But he makes some really valid points, I think.
I think the trick is probably, I think you made a really good point about how, you know, Apple essentially has created an ecosystem that is, I think, a really fine balance and is hard to maintain. And that is one where, you know, people can make an app for iOS and have a reasonable expectation that people aren't going to be writing for, you know, people aren't going to own a 3G, and that's the one they're going to be using their hot new app on, that they're probably going to be more updated to something a little bit more reasonable. And they've got a pretty good range of, I'd say, about 2 years where your stuff runs pretty well on iOS before you start going, man, this is a little slow enough to upgrade. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard thing to maintain, but they've done it, I think, because there's this singular control at Apple. Like they're the ones putting out the hardware, they're the ones putting out the updates and the OS, and they're the ones that have to approve anything you submit for an app.
Sure. You
send in an app, they approve it, and if it gets approved, it's going to work with pretty much most of the current stuff. But it's also a crowd of buyers who are used to upgrading every couple of years. So they've already kind of got that in their corner. So they don't have this problem where somebody's like, well, yeah, I don't, we should make sure it runs on the original iPhone up. Well, nobody thinks that way on the Apple side, but I hear a lot of people and a lot of developer friends who make Android apps who say that very thing. We got to make it go as far down as we can.
But why?
And I agree with you. It limits them, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that it does. Play services and some of the recent things that Google has done on the platform side has helped that. So older users of Android actually do get access to these new features thanks to this Trojan horse that is Play services. But I think ultimately developers who are starting right now and and scaling back their app that far are not going to be very happy with the return that they get. They're dealing with this legacy code and these legacy users that maybe aren't spending a lot of money. I'm hoping that in the next year or two this changes, because we've seen Android, especially in the past year, take great strides and become something greater. I don't know. That's
HTML5, baby. Forget all about this. Doesn't matter what platform you're on. Someday, I'm going to keep the dream alive.
Keep the dream alive, Tom.
Let's move on. Netflix possibly passing HBO in subscribers, Sarah.
Yeah. So Netflix it's on the precipice of having more paid U.S. customers than HBO. And the reason that those numbers, there's a little bit of a discrepancy is because some people you could say are Netflix subscribers, but they're enjoying a free trial, that sort of thing. So this is according to a poll of analysts by Bloomberg. If you're looking at about 31 million subscribers now in the U.S. compared to 28.7 million for HBO. That's Netflix compared to HBO. And again, those free trials kind of bring those numbers up a little bit. But in general, they're neck and neck. And if the trend continues, Netflix will have more subscribers than HBO. Now, of course, there is some talk about HBO expanding their video on-demand access for its shows via Google Play. That could be very interesting for the company. Then again, we mentioned last week, or maybe it was the week before, that Netflix kind of likes the idea of being part of a cable subscription package, in talks to be part of a bundled subscription on a box like for Comcast or another subscription service like Suddenlink for cable subscribers, and just be something that you pay a little bit more for rather than cut the cord for. So I don't know. I mean, we talk a lot about Netflix versus HBO, and it's hard to compare the two companies because they really started out very differently, but they seem to be converging more than ever. And I wonder, is it less about Netflix becoming HBO with its original content and HBO becoming more like Netflix, where it somehow figures out how to unravel itself from the confines of its cable, handcuffs, and has a lot more leeway to experiment with different revenue models? Scott, what do you think?
Well, I'm a huge fan of HBO and I'm a huge fan of Netflix. And if you asked me a week ago who I thought had more subscribers, I actually would have guessed Netflix. I don't know why I thought that. I just figured, it just seemed like a thing that would happen, because the way it works with HBO, it isn't just simply going through the front door of HBO. You got cable providers and packages, and then these are add-ons to those packages, and they're premium channels and all that. So I figured that was actually a harder target to get to for end users than it would be just for me to fire up Netflix on a device or a computer and sign up. So that surprises me in general. But now that I've been schooled as to what's actually happening, I'm not surprised it's happening, and probably happening soon. And if I was to take a guess, it would be this: as that gets closer and things start getting hairier for Netflix, and they start having this bigger and more dominant position in the market, HBO, Showtime, and others are going to start doing more streaming. And that probably means their own apps. HBO Go is a good example, but I think we're going to get to a point where that Go subscription is not tied to a cable subscription. I know they've talked about it forever, and people have been asking for it. And as an unplugger, I've wanted it since day one. But these are the market pressures that cause these kinds of things to happen. They had no reason to do it a year ago. But if these numbers are true, and it gets more and more this way, and Netflix becomes more and more of a threat, and is not, by the way, carrying any HBO content, so they're not streaming any of their stuff and extending their brand, then HBO only has one way to go, and that is, all right, pay us whatever it is a month. Here's the HBO Go app, and it now lets anybody get it, and boom, you're in. And I would welcome that with open arms. I think that would be an awesome thing to have happen, and it is enough of a good service. HBO content is good enough for me to say that's worth another $8 a month on top of these other weird $8 subscriptions I have. I realize it gets weird at some point. People have always said, well, Scott, at some point you're going to have enough of these. You're paying triple what you were paying for cable, and you're getting essentially the same stuff, and you're having to watch a lot of it the day later or wait 6 months for it to show up. I understand that. It's definitely an issue, but HBO is an exception. I would pay that right now.
I think Sarah's totally nailed it. In the HBO is becoming more like Netflix. Netflix has been becoming more like HBO. They're both meeting in the middle on this new way of doing things. And I think the most significant part of this is that HBO can now go to the cable companies and say, hey, you're talking to Netflix, and they are starting to pass us in subscribers. We now have a compelling reason why we need to be able to offer our subscription service outside of the cable operating system without you penalizing it. Because remember, the conventional wisdom is HBO doesn't want to go independent of cable systems because cable systems give them so much free marketing. But if the cable systems bring Netflix in, that's a Trojan horse for HBO to go, hey, wait a minute, you can't be mad at us for providing a subscription service outside of the cable system if you're working with Netflix. So this could end up being great for consumers, which is what's supposed to happen when you have competition. I like it.
Yep.
Let's finish up with the randomizer. Had a straw poll with our live audience today, and the winner with 47% of the vote, because there were 3 options. That's why we didn't have a 50% winner. A short that aired before The Empire Strikes Back in Australia and parts of Europe not only has been recovered and showed at a Marin Film Festival, but it will be coming to a home screen near you. They're going to be part of Netflix, as well as available for purchase on iTunes starting in 2014. If you don't know, the film is called Black Angel. Roger Christian was one of the set designers of the original Star Wars, and he was the filmmaker who made Black Angel. So for big Star Wars fans, this is a huge deal, and you'll be able to watch this in the comfort of your own home.
It looks awesome. I don't remember anything about this.
No, it didn't show in the United States, so I'd heard of it, but they thought the print had been lost.
Yeah, and I'd never even heard of it. So bring it on, man. I'm all about this. And maybe this is 1 inch closer to Lucas finally letting us have the Star Wars Christmas special this year.
On Netflix, right? Wouldn't it be perfect?
Yeah, it'd be dead perfect, and it would get so many views, and people would actually sign up for Netflix because of it, even though it is a hot pile of trash. We know it is. It doesn't matter. It's a part of the ecosystem. It's part of that the mythos of Star Wars. Let us have it. I want to find out where the Wookiees live and see their stupid little family. I'm in. What a great, stupid old thing that was.
What was it?
Terrible.
Like Generosity Day or something? I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, or Thankful Day or something. And they were at Kashyyyk, and there was a grandpa Wookiee and a kid Wookiee and a mom Wookiee, and Chewbacca was trying to hurry home, and it was terrible in every possible way. I have an old VHS copy floating around, but I'm telling you, man, streaming, HDify that thing. Let's remaster it, Dolby Surround.
It'll be the next Christmas Story ritual every Christmas time.
Yeah.
True.
TNT can play it all day long. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's check out what's on the calendar. Sarah Lane.
Okay. Author and Rhapsody founder and actually guest of TNT 1 week ago today, Rob Reed, is holding an AMA, Ask Me Anything, on Reddit all day. So if you want to ask him anything, today's the day. You know, Keanu Reeves did one over the weekend, and it was very interesting. Just saying. That Reddit is full of good stuff.
He's got a cool documentary out right now whose name I can't remember, but it's all about the history of filmmaking and the transition from film and aspect ratios and all that stuff up till digital. And he talks to famous directors, and it's really, really good. So people should watch it. And I didn't expect that. I mean, not that, whatever. We all think Keanu Reeves, whatever we think of his movies, fine, but seems like a really intelligent, interesting guy. And that film was great. And I wish I could remember the name of the movie, but it's on Netflix. People can see it now.
I'm just going to go ahead and admit that I watched Point Break over the weekend, and it holds up. All right, so the iPhone 5S and the 5C are both coming to Boost Mobile on November 8th. Gosh, we're already talking about November. Speaking of November, on the 20th, Google is going to shut down its checkout product. Yeah, just got a little bit left for Google Checkout. And then tomorrow, just a reminder, TNT is starting an hour and a half early. We're going to start at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, because we want to get our show done in time to go live at about 9:30 Pacific time for the Apple announcement, which should officially start at 10 a.m.
And we will not be getting up at midnight Pacific time for the Nokia World announcement, but we will cover those announcements
Correct.
on TNT
Yeah.
tomorrow. Yeah. Let's find out what's in the emails.
Incoming message.
In the emails is Brian's email. He says, I think I have a way to help HTC turn things around. I think if they got rid of Sense and sold pure Android phones, they could save money paying people to screw up and slow down a perfectly good operating system. If they sold pure Android phones, I feel they could sell a lot of phones. I have never considered purchasing an HTC phone because of Sense. I was very tempted by the Google Play Edition, but I want to wait for the Nexus 5. If any manufacturer goes pure Android, I would bet others would follow. What do you think? I don't know if that's going to do it for HTC. They look like they need a lot more help than just the software.
Well, I know I
Yeah.
can tell you as an Apple guy, and I'll admit that I love my iPhone. I would be much more likely to approach an Android switch, or at the very least getting a second device or something, if I knew it was pure Android straight up and down, or if Google made the phone. And I know you can, well, sure, Samsung makes these Nexus phones and all that stuff's great and everything, but if it was more of a pure phone, regardless of the manufacturer, and where they don't put over this overlay crap, I would be way more into that.
I think by the way, there's probably going to be a Nexus 5 announcement on October 24th. Google did indicate they're going to have an announcement then, and we're going to get a Nexus 5. I don't think they'd care if HTC did this, but I think HTC would look at it and say, well, we spent so much money already on Sense, and it's our differentiator. So we want to make sure that people don't think of it the way Brian does and push it rather than cut it. But I think Brian's onto something. If they put out some stock versions of the HTC One, it might get some attention. I just think HTC's problems are bigger than that could solve on its own. Well, thank you, Scott Johnson, for joining us today. Always a pleasure, my friend. What do you got going on that you would like to talk about?
Well, there are a few things. One is Lot Beta by Tom Merritt, an independent book.
Sorry.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did the cover for that book, and the book's really good too. And
It's
people
actually
should
an
check it out.
amazing job.
Yeah.
You've got to
thanks, man.
buy it just for the cover, for goodness sake.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. There's tons of artwork happening on my side of the world with illustration and stuff. But I'm moving the studio next week, so things are getting a little bit weird. Then I'm heading to BlizzCon, where I'll see you there and a bunch of other nerds. And then I'm back, and then I can finally get back in the swing of things. So things are a little bit nuts right now, but I would point people's attention to frogpants.com, where that links off to everything that's going on right now. Specifically, a show I do with Tom called Autopilot. Season 3 just kicked off last Wednesday. We have a new episode this week as well. And that is where we take a pilot from an old TV show and we tear it apart for about a half an hour each week. And season 3 just started. Go to autopilotshow.com for that. And for everything else, just follow me on Twitter. Scott Johnson is the name. And tweeting is my game.
It sure is.
That was awesome. It was the nerdiest thing you could have said. Loved it.
Don't forget to submit to our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com and let us know what stories you would like us to cover on the show. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/technewstoday. You can find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT. Email us TNT@twit.tv and give us a call. Leave us a voicemail 260-TNT show. We'll be back tomorrow, as Sarah mentioned, at an earlier time for the live viewers and maybe a little later in your feed for the folks in post, because we want to get all that Apple news in there for you. We'll see you then.